This Ag Vision program is made possible through the generous support of Syngenta Seeds MacKay brand. The results you need, the freedom to choose. And by Farms.com. Ag news, market prices, ag careers, and farm real estate. You'll find it all at Farms.com.
What about when it comes to the environment and the impact of industry on the environment? Was that a high concern?
No, the environment has actually decreased in concern in the last 5 years. Around the year 2000, it was probably at its high, its peak, 2000, 2001. It's really taken a back seat to food safety and animal welfare this time, which, you know, it's a bit of a surprise for us.
Now you talk about animal welfare, and I'm wondering if perhaps interest and concern around that might have been higher than livestock production as a whole. What were your findings in terms of that?
The animal welfare concept it's important to Canadians because as Canadians, we're animal-loving society. And you know, most people have a pet and they are concerned about the way farm animals are raised. So they ask questions about what animals eat, how they're cared for, their space requirements, do they go outside, do they have access to light, as an example. Those are some of the questions they have, which we have good answers. They do have good confidence in the way our farm animals are cared for, though, which is quite high. About 3/4 of Canadians felt that farm animals were treated moderately to very well, which, you know, is a pretty good report card, but it's something we want to keep an eye on to make sure they maintain trust in our system.
And is that something that you have seen changed over the time that you've been doing these studies?
Yes, it's a little bit higher than it has been in the past. So, you know, I'm not sure if we can credit our communications efforts or not. I think in agriculture we need to accept, you know, these are our benchmark levels of what our public think about us and, you know, our farm practices, and acknowledge where there are concerns and make sure that we put together programs and resources to address their questions.
So when you look at these studies, what emerges as one of the biggest concerns for you, an area that you would like to address when it comes to public awareness?
I was surprised at the level of interest in what farm animals are fed, and I think that stems back to concerns about BSE specifically, and we don't have a lot of resources out there about what animals eat. There's also some branded programs out there that talk about, you know, grain-fed beef or grain-fed chicken, and that may have stimulated some interest as well. So in the industry right now, we don't really have a lot of information on that topic. So I take it as a challenge to say, okay, here's a concern that people are interested in. We better deliver some programs and resources that answer that question.
Is it your sense that consumers are fairly well aware? You know, you just look at the egg section and there's the omega eggs, the organic and grain-fed, and some people might think they're all sort of related and one of the same, or they're all different. How high do you think is the level of confusion now, because we do have more labeling?
Yeah, I think it's pretty high. The egg department alone is a 10-minute decision for me at the grocery store, and I watch other people, you know, and I think we're lucky to live in a country that we have so many food choices, but I think it's also up to agriculture to provide information to the public to say, you know, for more on free-range eggs or omega-3 eggs, you know, go to our website or find out more, because I think people do want to make educated choices, and they are willing to pay more for a product if they understand the value of what they're paying for.
What about buying local? Are we seeing an increase in concern about where food is coming from?
I have had more questions. We field a lot of questions through our farmissues.com website and talking to the public at shows. We're at public events about 100 days a year, just talking to people who typically never get a chance to talk to a farmer. And in the last year and a half, I've seen more questions on buying local. How do we support Canadian beef farmers? How do I buy local products? Which I think is an advantage and an opportunity for agriculture to say buy Canadian, or in our case buy Ontario, or buy from your neighbor, as opposed to the big grocery chains, which people maybe are feeling a little disenfranchised with.
And we saw, didn't we, that Canadians care after the BSE and the horrendous impact on Canadian beef farmers, that we saw, in fact, numbers went up, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. The Canadian consumer, they do love farmers, and we know that from every survey, not just ours, but Leger Marketing Survey, for example, every year talks about the most credible and trusted profession, and farmers are always in the top 3 with doctors and firefighters, which I think is something that we should be proud of, but they don't know who we are. So that's our challenge, to say, to recognize the public likes agriculture, they like the people that work in it, they trust us, but we have the challenge of making sure they know who we are and what the true story is about agriculture in Canada. Canada.
So tell me more about what you can do, and you're a cog in this wheel of information and education. Are you working with producers themselves and giving them advice on how they can get their message out, or is that your job then to create the awareness and education?
A little bit of both. I think anyone that works in agriculture, whether you're a farmer right through the food chain to the grocery store, you can all play a role in getting out the facts about food or farming. And as a small organization that OFAC is, we provide resources and expertise to help people do a better job, but we're just a few people. And sometimes these issues have to be dealt with one person at a time. You know, you could be at a dinner party and someone says, "What do you do for a living?" "I work on ag vision." "Oh, is that egg or egg?" You know, they don't know the difference, and so there's a great opportunity. And with our attitude is no question's a dumb question when it comes to food or farming. We just appreciate that someone cared enough to ask.
Exactly, that's a great philosophy. So what will you take away now from these recent survey results? What, in terms of planning, will you now change now that you have these new results in hand?
Well, we do have a new program, our virtual farm tours, that we're offering on our website. And we know from our latest survey results that the source of information of the internet is increasing exponentially, which isn't a surprise. But it makes me happy to know that the money we're investing on things like virtual farm tours, where people can go to farmissues.com, click on a sheep farm, and tour it around it. They've probably never been on a sheep farm before. You don't have to worry about wearing your rubber boots.
Yeah,
and
that's the best way to tour a sheep farm.
Exactly, and you can watch a lamb being born and just see real things on a real working farm. And I see that as a great investment for agriculture, to know that the internet is a source of information and it's growing in popularity. So for us to be proactive, put resources there, we know people will go there for information.
And you're a nonprofit, and so you're funded by whom? Who do you represent?
We represent all the farmers of Ontario, livestock and poultry farmers, as well as any associated businesses. So memberships as well as donations and project support.
Now, you've done Ontario-wide surveys, but you've also done Canada-wide surveys. I'm curious, can you take the results from Ontario, for example, and find that it's pretty similar across Canada when it comes to the awareness we talked about?
Very surprisingly similar. I expected there to be bigger differences between Ontario's results and Canada's results. There's a few differences. Quebec has its own culture and attitude about agriculture, and British Columbia has its own attitudes as well. But the rest of Canada is surprisingly homogenous when it comes to farming.
Interesting to get this sense of how the country's thinking. Then thanks for being with us, and we'll bring you back when you're doing more numbers.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Our thanks to Crystal MacKay for joining us today. Stay
there.